Lewis Powell, right before becoming a Supreme Court justice in the 1970s, wrote a secret private memo for some business bigwigs at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, one of whom happened to be neighbors with Powell. In that memo, titled Attack on American Free Enterprise System, Powell laid out the problems facing business in the immediately post-civil rights movement era of the United States. Basically, they were weak. They were being picked on, and the government had gotten out of hand and overly regulatory. And to gain back power, businesses needed to invest time and money into getting free market ideology, small government, and other right-wing issues back in the mainstream and take back their power. To do this, they needed to invest in pushing universities to include more right-wing thought, conservative think tanks to give those universities a place to send their students who can then publish papers legitimizing the right-wing thoughts. Those papers can then be used by lobbyists to push right-wing thoughts, and those lobbyists will be bought and paid for by businesses, and, just as importantly, businesses needed to infiltrate the media, who were unsympathetic to the big business causes and constantly meddling. And on this last point, one of the major tactics big business employed as they enthusiastically took the Powell Memo plan and ran with it was screaming whenever and wherever they could about left-wing bias in the media. Because now they were legitimizing their zany fringe ideas about government and economics through the creation of academic scholarship and publications, and could then point to mainstream media and accuse them of bias for unfairly ignoring the work of their brilliant academics. And so, terrified at the prospect of being viewed as biased, news media began publishing more right-wing talking points and scholarship in order to be able to point and say, see, we're not biased, God forbid, because we're willing to even publish these bad, crazy ideas. And thus began the rightward bend of every aspect of American life as businesses threw gobs of money at influencing politics, government, universities, the media, and our very culture, aided in the 1980s by Ronald fucking Reagan, who ruined everything. T-shirts available at LeigiaMillerMerch.com, whose deregulatory push allowed for greater monopolization of the media to where now we have a media landscape owned and dominated by billionaires who have inherited the pro-business apparatus built in the 70s, which has now turned into a multi-headed monster thanks to Citizens United and the protection of money as speech in this country, which means any billionaire can pay for any political outcome they want. And so, targeting the media and now big tech with the accusation of bias and, as an extension, censorship, is a well-worn tactic by the right to control the narrative and legitimize the harmful ideas and ideologies that once were fringe, not because there's a leftist bias in universities and think tanks, but because they're bad ideas that usually aren't backed by truth or science. Indeed, much of the research that has come out of right-wing think tanks has been debunked over the years for bad methodology or fully made-up data. And it's a well-worn tactic because it works, even though numerous studies have shown that the accusation that the media is biased is itself a lie. Similarly, the accusation that censorship online is biased has failed to be proven as well. According to the NYU Stern Center for Business and Human Rights, after extensive research, they have found no evidence of anti-conservative bias online. And this last October, the journal Nature published a study that found that while conservatives and people who support Trump are more likely to have content removed or their accounts suspended by major social media platforms, and their accounts sanctioned more often for sharing misinformation, that is not a product of liberal biased platforms or moderators. The study showed that this held true. Their content was removed or flagged more often for untrue or low-quality information, even when it was Republicans who are the ones determining what counts as untrue and low quality. Elon Musk's own AI cited him as the greatest propagator of misinformation on his own platform. I think this is all best summed up by a comment on a random right-wing typepad post from 2022 that has weirdly been making the rounds as a meme on social media lately, but that is not satire as far as I can tell, and is a genuine thought that someone had once. Username RightSideRick says, unfortunately, the problem with left-leaning media is they're intrinsically more strict with their propaganda to only using verifiable sources, so it's really hard to poke holes in their ideology and arguments in comparison to a lot of quality right-wing content. That makes attacking their points with fact-checkers not very effective unless their fact-checkers use misinformation tactics as well. In essence, people like us on the right have to work harder and more creatively to push our agenda as statistics and, unfortunately, official studies aren't usually on our side. Oop, right side Rick, I think you just said the quiet part out loud, buddy, but good job identifying the problem.